Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. I almost said happy Wednesday. Good morning. We skipped yesterday because I had an appointment. So good to see you. Thanks for coming on our not normal day. Hello from Deanna at Ribbon Candy Hooking. Let me pull this open. I've got a change of screen. Oh, good. Oh, good. We remembered. You all are so good. Gayla, good to see you in Missouri. Beverly, great to see you in Crystal. Hi from Nova Scotia, coming out of COVID isolation and getting excited to get back to make. Oh, that's so nice. Oh, good. Yeah, I'm wondering what's happening here. We haven't really had much of a change of status in Connecticut, which is fine for me. I'm really one for keeping things on. So we'll see what happens. But it's settled enough where we are and being real close to Yale and a lot of people coming and going. I hope that things kind of stay the same for us for the time being. Just because, even in this one, I didn't tell you yet, Mom, even in this 1 week, actually within 2 days of each other, there were 2 cases in Jocelyn's class. So probably one, gave it to another and nobody knows, and the chronology's weird, but, they're not keeping the kids home now. They're just saying, wait and watch. And like I said yesterday or the day before, we're not doing play dates in the meantime, but it's still, for me, it's still a lot. I don't want that kind of message coming to me every other day. I can't handle it. I get crazy and call up to school and say crazy things that get myself in trouble. But I'm just wondering what is going on over there at the same time, right? Oh, dear. Becky, good to see you. Mom, there you are. Morning, all. Oh, Linda, good to see you. Oh, so you were actually isolating, Crystal. You were actually isolating because there was a case? I missed the nuance of that. Let me know if so. Coming out of isolation. I thought you meant just because Canada has been very stitched up for a long time. Yeah, let us know if there was something going on. Doreen, good to see you. Barbara, good to see you. Cindy, good to see you. Happy coffee time, everybody. Martha, good to see you. Cat's Gallery, great to see you too. And Robin, it's a funny day for us, but it's good to be flexible, right? Jill, good to see you. And Dave, good afternoon. Cheers, my dears. Oh, good. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. I put the Proddy thing in there too, just in case you were interested. Kimberly, great to see you in Northwest Ohio. Good to see you. Crafter's Grimoire, good morning. You had it last October, got through, but like a seriously bad flu. Yeah. Oh, it scares me so much. It really does. Denise, good morning. Good to see you. Oh, it's good to see everybody. I'm trying to think of I have so many things to tell you. They're just not in the front of my mind right now. Lots of exciting things going on. So, you know, I put up yesterday. I put up that kit. I haven't put out a kit for a long time, as you know, because I've been working on a book project and it's been all consuming. But I put out the bunnies, right, which is right here. I still have I have the thing on the couch, so I don't have that with me. But it's this design here as a class or a pattern, class pattern on any backing, or just the kit without the class. All kinds of combos. But I told you I was going to work on dyeing the nylons, the pantyhose, and I did. Like, this is more than 100 pantyhose. It's so crazy. I was having such a good time. It went so fast too, right? Like, just tons and tons. Let me pull some out. Get my coffee cup away from there, though. It's amazing how well dye hits. The light is never good, is it? But it's amazing how well the dye hits nylons. That probably doesn't look good at all, does it? I'll take a photo. But tons of nice Eastery colors in here. I just was throwing in, I used Jocelyn's technique that she calls, if you saw that live video that we did one time, she was showing me how to dye nylons. Her technique is called mopping the floor, I think, or / making a pizza. I don't know what we settled on, but it was super fun to make crazy amounts of pantyhose. It's a lot. It's more than we're going to use for this project, without a doubt. But I thought it was fun. And the key to it, I think I'll make a video, because the key to doing it in really soft colors, as opposed to, you can get it really crisp and bright and real pronounced dramatic colors. But the key to getting the nice soft mix of colors was just what my daughter Jocelyn had said, putting it into like the casserole dish and making sure it's really wet, and then just truly mopping with it and flipping it over and spraying some more with the hairdresser bottle, spraying a little more dye and mopping more. Because when you don't mop, the lines and the stripes and the dots are really pronounced and really striking. But when you do keep mopping and flipping it over, all that water soaks through, and it making everything pastel all over again, right? It's almost like wringing out a face cloth or something. It turns everything light and sherbety again. So it was fun. It was a really fun and a super fast project. Joyce, good to see you, and Nancy, good to see you in the 70s today. Yes, Chrissy, I think I sent everything to you. For those of you that took the MCM Modern class, I'm sorry it's taking so long. I split it into two because of the two different classes. And I had a big document that I needed to figure out how to zip up, and I zipped. It was a huge, like almost 80-page document that had multiple pictures on every page. So me being the techno bozo that I am, I screwed that up plenty. But now I know. Learning curve with everything. Beverly, good to see you. Beverly. Oh, Beverly in Maine. Good to see you. Different Beverly. I'm sorry. I just read right by. Good to see you. Thank you, Martha. I'm glad. I'm really happy. I'm loving hooking with them. And I got some messages from people saying, I love to hook with them too. So exciting. And behind me here, I took out, I'm going to have to update the website because the Maud Lewis swatch set was sold out. And this is the one that comes with a big moon-eyed cat, right, for your free pattern. So, and it has a spider in it, but I think I'll take the spider out now that it's not Halloween. This swatch set came out in December. So I just did a few more. I think the quantity is something, I know some of them were pre-sold, so I think the quantity is something like maybe 3 left, something like that. But I do like this color scheme more than I thought, I have to say. More than when I did it, I thought not really my colors, it's way too primary heavy, but they are the Maud Lewis colors, the iconic folk artist from Nova Scotia, right? But yeah, so there's going to be, I think 3, maybe 4 of those in the store currently. And I had this other idea. I had to bounce it off you. This is such a crazy idea. And it was another idea that Joss gave me because we're coming on to Valentine's Day. And before I forget, I've already decided on Valentine's Day, which is Monday, I thought instead of running a show in the morning, I thought I'd rather run like a fancier show at night. It'll be like a Galentine's and Dave, of course, have to be there. I thought more of like an evening Galentine's event because I'm not doing anything and I don't know if you're doing anything, but I thought Monday night, let's maybe do something together. I might dress up or something and I'll figure out some great content that we could do together and have more of like a cocktail night type show on Monday. So in lieu of running the coffee time on Monday, I'm going to run like more of a Galentine's event and Guy Times, right? All Valentines, all of our Valentines together. In the evening and run an evening show instead that's a little bit longer. I thought that would be fun. I will have just submitted another chapter for the book and that will be like done. So I will feel like celebrating together. So that'll be coming up this Friday. But boat paint colors, absolutely, Crystal, all marine colors that she had that her husband went and scrounged, right, from whoever was around and had a little extra marine paint hanging out. Yeah, that's a great story. But so, I was thinking about Valentine's with the kids and things, and I had to order Valentine stuff off Amazon. They wanted different themes of cards to give out in the classroom. Remember that? They still sort of do that. And so I was on doing that, and then I thought I would like to make them a Valentine. And I thought, you're going to think I'm crazy. I thought, could this work? Thanks, Dave. I'm glad. I think I'm going to get, like I need a project right now. I think I'm going to get some latch hook backing, just a small piece. And I was thinking about, would it work, right? These are like these sour candy ribbons. Could it work? Would it work? Should it even happen if I were to like cut these in half and hook like a heart for them to make an edible, like rug hooked sour candy Valentine? Could it work? Am I missing something? Could I do this better? I'm not going to do latch, right? Because pulling 2 ends up, with all the sugar would come off. But I wonder if I could carefully, if they're thin enough, pull them up into a loop and give them each like a heart. I mean, what a waste of time, right? But I thought it would be super funny. Because Joss was saying we were eating the like licorice shoelaces the other day, the real thin ones. And she said, oh, I wonder if you could do your rug hooking with these. And I thought, interesting, because these are even flatter and more like wool. We'll see what happens. I'm going to give it a try. It's probably disgusting. I'm going to waste material, the backing material, but I thought if it works at all, it would be super funny. I'm going to make that a 15-minute project and see what comes out of that, whether it is tears or utter joy, because I think that kids would think it was really funny if it could work. And what else did I want to tell you? Oh, I'm really, really needing examples of, if you have them. I'm on the punch chapter of the book, and one of the sub chapters, of course, is Russian punch, miniature punch, also needle felting, all of those stabby crafts where you're stabbing something, right? But I don't have a ton of examples of mini punch. And although I'm about to launch a major mini punch campaign at Ribbon Candy Hooking that will last from now until forever, because I'm loving it so much. Do you have any examples of mini punch, also called Russian punch, that I could use for this chapter? I would love to have them. I'm very short on examples, and I'd love to have some more. So I've been working on this one. You saw me work this one over the weekend, the Jacobian type design I did. I'm going to fluff out the sheep more to be a bit fatter, more like the 1980s country sheep, but it has a bit of a Dr. Seuss feel, which is what I was going for. And I don't know if you can see the inside. It's got that nice pile, doesn't it? It's got that nice soft pile. So many colors, so much fun. I'm going to be doing basically every design that's available on a Ribbon Candy Hooking is soon going to be available as a mini punch design, because this is a day's work. I mean, it goes so fast. You think because your equipment is so miniature, the yarn is miniature, the needle is like a little hypodermic needle, you'd think it'd be so painful and slow, and it's actually not. For me, this goes much faster than traditional punch, right? It is on a smaller scale, but I just find it, when you look at it, if you can see, let me see if I can get you in there. You know what? I'm scared to take it off because can I put it back exactly the same way? If you can look in there, you can see that maybe there's one or two instances of a loop coming up because I accidentally punched into the same spot. But I mean, no, there really aren't any. There really aren't any. Normally for me with punch, there'd be lots of examples of having punched into the same loop because I looked up to watch something that's happening on Cobra Kai and I didn't realize I stabbed into the same hole, and then, and then I've got to deal with that later. But with this craft, this weave, the weaver's cloth, is so thin and tight. It's very hard. I couldn't, if I was holding a scientific microscope, if I had the Hubble technology over my project and I was looking at it, I bet you I could not stab into the same spot twice because there's so many spots because it's so fine. So all of this is so interesting to me, but I do need more examples. Just as I get so frustrated with threading the punch needle, that is the thing, isn't it? The punch needle that is the thing. Hold on one second. Let me just do something really quick on air so that we all know what we're talking about. The hardest part of this is I'm still with you, is the threading it. There's like absolutely no doubt. I'm looking for my threader because I want to show. Here it is. So I ordered a bunch more threaders. Side conversation here, but let's do it. So you know that I love these pretty punches, right? These are my favorite punches, and I'm going to be they're vintage and they're limited, but I have a ton of them, so I'm going to be stocking them for a little while. They're called dial, right? So you turn the dial and it changes the way the length of the needle, right? Because at the end of the day, with any punch needle you're doing, whether it's traditional or this miniature Russian punch, the distance between the hole, the eye of the needle part, and the shaft, the hilt of the shaft, is going to dictate the height of the loop. So with that in mind, with these you can turn them, right? Instead of just changing the needle, and it changes the height, which is quite nice, and it tells you like on it what it's got. And this is the one that sits on top that I really love and covet. But the thing is, the threading, right? So what Jill is saying, it works differently than a traditional punch needle. So I order a bunch of these guys on Amazon because they cost nothing, right? Like 10 of them are going to cost like $4 or $3 or something. But it's one of these. And it's basically a regular threader, but to scale, it's much longer. These are 8.5 inches because it has to be long enough when you put the thing up into the needle, right? It has to come out here, right? So that you can then, it has to come out at the top of the needle so you can put your yarn through, right? Or your thread, more like thread or floss, right? So it has to be able to go right up the length of the needle, and thus it has to be, I would say, minimum of 8 inches because they come in different sizes. And if you get the regular one, it's not going to be long enough to go up the body of the needle. So you have to go up the needle, thread it, pull it back down, but then you have to thread it a second time through the eye of the needle this way. So first it's going up this way, catching the thread, bringing it down the needle, and then you go through the needle, catch it again, and pull it back through. So you thread it twice, right? And at the end of the day, once you get going, once you get some speed, like for me with always the wrong pair of glasses, this is a thing. But once I got it, I really got it, right? It was super frustrating, but then I got it, and now it's just zip, zip, zip. I can not even pay attention and get it done. But one of the main things I think that goes wrong with this miniature punch, all the same things that go wrong with regular punch, right? When your loops aren't staying, it's the classics, like the greatest hits, the gold album, starting with number 1. Is it snagged on your armpit, on your wrist? Is it snagged inside the ball of yarn, the source? Is it not pulling up freely? If there's a snag, it ain't gonna stay, right? The loops are not gonna stay. Golden hits number 2. Is it the right backing? Did you buy the wrong monk's cloth, right? That's like a terrible classic because that requires stopping and ordering more materials. Some of the other ones, with this one, did you thread both parts or did you forget to thread the eye, right? Because that's easy to do. If you haven't threaded the eye, that loop is not going to stay. What are some of the other classics? There's so many classics with punch that are like, if you haven't thought it through, there's so many ways that you could, are you lifting the needle up, right? That's probably number 2. Are you lifting it up off the backing? Because if you lift it up at all, the loop ain't gonna stay, right? If you go like this to look where the next loop is and bring it back down, it's gonna pull out the loop behind it. You have to literally scrape across the surface like you would with traditional hoop, right? Oxford style punching. So no lifting at all. So there's only a finite number of things. It's a handful of things that could be going wrong if it's not working. So it's very easy to diagnose, but it doesn't make it any less frustrating for the person who's just approaching the craft, right? But they share the same problems because they're both pretty much the same tool. I love this one because I love the diminutive kind of size to it. I love the speed that I can do it at. I just like the equipment better. I like having something small, and you can see I'm still punching into the frame with the angry teeth. And I'm not one of these people who trusts myself or my equipment to move something with loops again onto the frame. I know freezer paper, I know all that stuff, but I just don't. I've had too many disasters. So when I finish up in that square, I'm going to move that piece to a quilter's hoop, right? A lap hoop or just an embroidery hoop. And I'm going to finish it that way because those little loops will get crushed for 5 seconds, but they're not going to get pulled out in a quilt loop. So I'm just not bold enough to do that. Has anybody tried square embroidery hoops? I see them all over the place, and I have so many traditional round hoops that I've never bought a square. I always think that must be very hard on your backing fabric in the corners. I mean, it's a softened square, right? It's like a little TV set. But has anybody used those? I'm wondering what the benefit is of having a square hoop instead of a large circle or an oval where there really aren't pronounced corners. That's something that I would love to know. Linda, good to see you. Oops, says, yeah, I know. My mom was watching me do this. She loves that soft. It's very soft pile. I'm using acrylic yarn / floss, right? You use whatever goes through the needle that you choose because like these pretty punches are a little bit bigger than, for example, the Ultra Punch that's Tattered Flag sells, and all punches, right? And even the traditional Russian punch comes in 1 strand, 3 strand, and 6 strands. So you really, once you make a choice about which tool you want to use, how far you want, maybe you want multiple because you want a little glint in someone's eye and you want 1 strand for that, but you don't want to do the whole thing with 1 strand. Once you figure that out, then you figure out what materials am I using, because it's very common to use like the DMC floss, but then you would need the mini punch that can accommodate that, because sometimes you have to actually even separate DMC floss to punch because it's too wide for some of the mini needles. But it's an interesting, completely different area to get into and to think about. And of course, people use this a lot on denim, things like that, on clothing, and to do applique stuff to then apply to clothing. So it is a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it. Is mini punch like 3-strand floss? So Karen, it can be 1, 3, or 6. Anything approaching kind of like a sock weight yarn is not going to be mini punch. You're going to be looking at like the worsted weight, regular traditional punch. There is a break off of weight at some point, but there are always slide dogs that fall in between. So I do have a couple sock yarns and lace yarns that are from the knitting store that will fit into this punch, but there are other sock yarns that won't, that snag, and then the loops don't stay. So it's always a question of get a tool, get one tool, see what you already have that'll fit through it, and that'll dictate to you what you're looking for in the future. Because you can spend a lot on those like Valdani threads, you know, the tiny little bobbin spools are like this big. You can spend a lot on a million colors of those super fine ones. But you want to figure out the sort of ratio, what size you want to work in, because you probably don't want to be separating DMC. You want to avoid that scenario. So I'm in the process of figuring that out too in what I want to stock as far as selling kits, because I want to be 1000% sure that I've got a good combo of a needle that I'm happy with and materials that I'm happy with that are going to go through to eliminate that number one solid gold hit that the material is not right for that particular punch, because there are so many sizes. To eliminate that, then we know that if there's a problem, it's going to be like hit number 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, but not number 1. So it's tricky. It takes some fiddling and experimenting. Karen says, Chrissy says, so mini punch would never be used as a rug on the floor. Well, you know, I mean, I have heard of instances of people doing it. You can get quite a high pile, right? Because you can dial it quite high. It could be high and cushy. With the more shallow or lower piled loops, I don't think I would ever be worried about it coming undone, right? Because with this kind of punch, it's actually embroidery, right? It's more akin to embroidery, except you're using what looks like a tiny traditional punch. But it is more like embroidery. And when you finished a piece, if it's on clothing, from everything I've read, I have not done pieces for clothing for myself at this point, maybe in the future. But from what I understand, that punched part of your clothing, for example, if you do a jean jacket and you punch the back of it, that will last longer than the jacket itself. I mean, that like universally is said, the part that you punch and put through the wash, that lasts. So in terms of durability, it sounds to me like it's super durable. But at the same time, in different instances with patches on clothing, instead of punching directly into, for example, denim or twill or duck or something like that, instead of punching directly into material, when people are using appliques, I'm often also hearing that they're using glue, and I'm not for glue, and I don't think you need glue. These loops are in there so tight. So my answer would be, I haven't done anything that size yet, but I don't see why not. They are in there really good. It would be very, very thin, but if you dialed it much higher, I mean, I punch on B, but you can dial to F. Let's see how long F is. Yeah, F's really long. I mean, that's coming out more than an inch, and the distance is more than an inch between the shaft and the eye. So that doesn't mean it's going to punch an inch, but it's going to punch close to, I would say, half an inch, right? Because it's going to do the loop. It's going to fold over. So maybe that's a to be continued. I'm not sure. Maybe somebody else knows the answer to that, but I don't see why not. It seems like a super, super durable option. It would be time consuming. That's the thing. Because the loops are so small, I can finish a piece really quickly because my pieces are small. But at the same time, I don't know that it would be that much more than doing a traditional punch drag, really, right? There's more holes. To be continued. I'm not sure. I would love it if somebody gave it a shot. Maybe to do something that's kind of meeting halfway, like a runner for the table, that's larger than a piece for the wall. I'd be curious about doing something like that in terms of time, and doing something with a higher pile. But then when you're doing something with a higher pile, you're using a lot of material. Like you're using a lot of yarn. That would be a thing, because it's not cheap either. To be continued. Let me think that one through. I'm working it out live, and it's probably super boring to hear me do that. But interesting, Chrissy. I'm going to figure it out. Doreen, does the cat have it? Oh, do you sell the Russian punch needle? Martha, I'm about to. I just bought like a big lot of these needles. So they are finite. They're not being made anymore. Boyle, Boyle, sells these on Amazon. I think there may be 13 or 15 each with this thing on top. These spools can be hard to find, right? These are the things because these are finite. But you don't have to use these. You could put on a different spool because it comes with this. Let me show you. So if you have the Valdonis, or you have, for example, DMC, and you have rolled them with your regular spinner, then you just put that ball on here, right? Because this is really what you need. Once you have this, you put on any sort of ball of any floss that you already have, and it's going to run through. So, you know, the winders that you get when you do things with yarn, right? You get the Swift. I have the Amish one that sits on the table, or the umbrella one, right? You've got the Swift and the winder. They do make different sizes of winder for winding bobbins. So if you had a smaller one like this, as long as it fits, the hole fits on this, you could put any thread that both fits through this thing and, you know, can be accommodated here. Because those spools are not made anymore, as far as I know, either. I saw some on Amazon, but they were only available as kits. So that's also a to be continued. I haven't done a ton of searching, but I'm figuring out how to create bobbins with materials I already have that go through this comfortably, easily, and quickly, and also sit up here, because with this, you eliminate problem number one of punching, which is it's snagged, it got stuck in my armpit, it's stuck on the bag of Doritos, it caught on something, and it's not making loops anymore. You completely eliminate that when your source is above you and not under your arm or fallen between the couch cushions. So this is all stuff I'm figuring out right now because I like it so much. And I feel like with this miniature punch as a craft, the miniature punch that I'm finding and that I'm making myself, and there's some secret projects for the book that I can't show. This one wasn't one of them, the Seuss thing. But what I'm finding is that it has potential to look exactly like traditional punch or rug hooking, in that all the color differences and all those little loops, unless you have a cue to the scale of it, you can quickly look at a piece and you think that it's rug hooked or punched, and it's smaller, right? People mounting them on cutting boards and in the lids of old pans and using all kinds of found materials and architectural materials to like mount these smaller pieces. But without a cue, at first glance, they have all of that sort of aura of antiquity. Right? They have that look, the color changing look, those fine tonal changes. You can get exactly the same traditional, primitive, folky feeling that you get and maybe love with your rug hooking and your traditional punch. You can absolutely get that with miniature punch, but work on smaller projects and get a few done a week. So yeah, it's definitely something that I'm actively putting together because I'm not liking the kits that I'm seeing out there. I'm seeing like real inferior yarns and needles and things like that. So I'm figuring it out in my free time, which isn't a ton, but I'm going to get there probably sooner rather than later and be able to offer some things very economically that will be real pretty. And then we can pull from the entire. I mean, I have hundreds of patterns up on Ribbon Candy Hooking. We can pull from any of them. They would just be smaller, right? You can pull anything, and you can draw your own pattern too. So it's a whole new world opening up for us with a huge question mark hanging over it. Karen says, I have some examples of punch needle done with 3 strands. I would love to see those, Karen. I could really use those. And that DMC floss, right, that is one of the least expensive of the options for threading the mini punch. But I'll tell you what, when you see examples of things that are punched with 3-strand Russian DMC floss, it is incredibly pretty. The luster of those loops when they come up, they create their own kind of pattern and texture. It's really, really lush looking. And the Valdonis on the opposite end of the spectrum are much flatter looking in color, much more suited to kind of primitives and stuff. They don't have that great luster, in my opinion, that the DMC floss does, and they're a lot more expensive. So lots of things to choose from. Again, just a question of figuring it out. And I'm gonna do some of the footwork for you if I can, and if we pool knowledge, then that's gonna help a lot too. But I would love to see those, Karen. Absolutely. What did I miss? Yep. Hi, Catalina. Oh, are you going to offer nylons without a kit? Yes, I will. I'll put a bunch of them. I'll probably do lots of like baker's dozen. I always like baker's dozen more than a dozen. I'll do lots of 13 of the stockings. They're individual stockings, like one leg. And the tops of them are opaque, and the bottom is like the see-through. And like I was saying the other day, and if you didn't tune in, what I do typically is so the tops of the stockings are like real opaque, right? Like you get it's real color saturation, and that's nice. But then at the bottom, I tend to cut the sheer part right across like this, like nylon loops, like this, like I was going to do making a pot holder in the old days, right? And I typically double it up when I hook, and it comes out so pretty, a little bit transparent, right? Like almost like an eggshell. It looks real fragile, but beautiful color, really beautiful color. I just love this technique. And the thing that reminded me about this, that made me want to do the eggs with the nylons and have them be a little transparent, if you remember way back in Coffee Time, there was an episode where we were looking at, I'm never going to remember. I'm never going to remember. Maybe you will. We were looking at, it might have been one of the Judy Taylor books. I'm not sure. But we were looking at an example that somebody had made of a high heel shoe, like a Cinderella shoe. And she had, I guess it was on monk's cloth, or at least maybe something with a very white background, painted the shoe onto the backing cloth and then hooked transparent plastic bags, like garbage bags, completely transparent, not white. And you could see through them and see the paint underneath. And it looked like almost like a sandy texture, like a crystal texture. And the color was just, it was like looking through something, right? It was just beautiful. I wish I could remember that reference. I'll think of it at some point and show you again. But that's what made me want to do this, because I couldn't think of a way other than with the clear garbage bags to get that transparent look. And then I thought, wait a minute, nylons, that's going to work at least as well. So very different than not having to paint, right? So I eliminated some heartache there. But yeah, these nylons have been hooking up really, really well. Crafter's Grimoire said, would you think the stretch would be uneven, but the childhood punch rug practice was to use furniture tacks, yeah, on a square canvas frame? Absolutely, and some people still do, just like a painter's frame from the art store, rip the canvas off and put thumbtacks all around. That works great. With the mini punch, from what I'm finding, it's very typical for people to do it in an embroidery hoop. Now, I'm doing it on my frame because I have so many rug hooking frames, but it seems to me that when I'm not super taut, it doesn't make a huge difference. I prefer to be as tight as a drum, right, because I have that drilled into me. But it seems to me like it works quite well with a hoop, too, that you don't need to have anything like way more expensive than that. So being taut tight is a thing, but it's not as big of a thing for me as with traditional punch. Seems much more forgiving. That needle is sharp and it wants to stab. So it's going to stab. It's going to go right through, and it's going to go through real well. Very, very little margin for error with this tool. It's just remarkable. Linda says, I have examples of punch done with 3 strands. Absolutely, Linda, I need them. Is it 3.5 inches wide? Is it 3.5 inches wide? Jill, is what 3.5 inches? I'm trying to remember back to what we were saying. A prim bobbin for weaving is 3.5 inches wide. Oh, I see what you mean. No, you mean is this 3.5? No, this is 2 inches. This is definitely 2 inches. You could fit 2 inches with the hair on either side, but no. But something like that, I see where you're going with that. That's something I need to figure out. Even getting like these centers so I can spin my own. Because these are 200 yards, which is a lot, right? But if for kits I could spin smaller amounts, then the kit could be quite economical because I'm not blasting through supplies as much. But yeah, I do need to, I know you're a weaver, so you're a good person to talk to about that. Debbie says, I just tried hooking with pantyhose for the first time. I had trouble keeping the curled side down. That is a thing. That's absolutely a thing. So the more narrow you cut crossways like this, the more narrow your piece, the more certainly it's going to curl. I would say just give a shot at cutting it twice as wide as you have been, and then see if you can force it to, with the first loop that you're pulling up, force it to do it the other way around, and it might be that the following loops follow suit. But I do the same thing. Sometimes I cut very, very thin, like when I filled in the rabbit's eye, I cut very thin, and it wanted to flip upside down, and it did. And it happened to look fine the way that the loop came up because it was so little showing the whites of the eye. But I know what you mean, and I would say first thing to try, just cut a little bit thicker. And that should work better. It's always possible to run loops through with a carrier, meaning with something else. I don't like to do that because I feel like it's wasting 2 times the amount of material, even if it's scrap material, and it's just more work. So I would try the thicker cut first and see how that goes. I found cutting this way, right, into smaller pieces, you get fewer loops, but I found it curled less than cutting the long way. So I initially, when I first did it, was cutting the long way because I wanted a longer run of looping. I wanted a longer piece to work with, but I found that the curl was huge going this way, the stretch. Going this way, it hardly wants to stretch at all. Going this way, right, you could swing from a tree off this thing. It will stretch all the way down. Not much stretch here. So do it this way and a little bit further apart, and you should see a significant loss in that kind of flipping and the 2 ends curling around, right? You get like the 2 sides want to curl up. You should see the absolute end to that. So let's do some content too. That was a bit of a rabbit hole, but aren't rabbit holes fun? Let me just have a sip of coffee. So talk about rabbit holes. I've gone down some crazy ones. We have been talking about this book. I'm going to return to this for a while. This might be a to be continued, but I want to show you. So I went down a rabbit hole and I posted in our group yesterday, our Facebook group. If you're on Facebook, Rug Cooking and Punch Needle Club. I'm going to share a screen with you for a second, so you might lose me for a second. Oops, spoiler alert. I went down a rabbit hole looking at, come on, you stinker, looking at this book. So I posted this on our Facebook group. Has anybody read this book yet? I'm listening to it on Audible, right? Because I've got all the Amazon Prime stuff. This book is called Threads of Life, and it really ties into what we've been talking about this week, which is Textiles Transformed, a book by Mandy Pattullo, about using a mixed media kind of wools, yarns, old cut-up quilts, cut-up clothing, all kinds of bits and pieces salvaged and saved from very, very rough, right, to like, you know, quite good and new stuff. Putting it all together to create a kind of collage-y thing. And talking about wool applique brought me to this book because I was aware of it. There's a link to this in the video that you're watching right now. So into our video right now, there's a link to this book. I have to say it has been, I'm only at the beginning, but if you are interested in embroidery, textiles, and history, this is going to be a great book for you. It's not a riveting book by any means. I'm only through the beginning of it, but it really nicely ties, you love that book. Oh, Mom, I didn't know you had that one. How funny. Just picked it up on the bedside table. What a coincidence, right? I didn't know you had that. It ties up so nicely history and the history of needlework and anything done with a needle, right? So sewing and embroidery, mostly embroidery, right? So it really is 2 separate things. It's the history of embroidery using a needle, which is a lot about what we've been talking about this week, and history. So it starts off talking about like the Bayeux Tapestry, the history of that, how that, you know, this is like the war of like, what was it, 1066, I think, the Hastings battle and all that represented in this famous, important tapestry. Designed by men, made by women who remain anonymous. But it's a story of war, but also of people. And it tells you crazy numbers. Like there are 7,400 and whatever dogs in this piece, and there's like 3 women in the whole piece. One of them is being chased by a man who's trying to assault her, like sexually assault her. Another one is like breastfeeding, that kind of thing. And really, women really put in their place in this tapestry. But it talks about that war and how symbolic this was, because as soon as you embroider something and start telling your version of the story, you have the power to shape the story, right? It doesn't mean that you are creating a false story or alternate truths, but you are able to retell the story in your own words. So for women who had the ability to sew, storytelling from their point of view became very powerful and sometimes dangerous. There's some crossovers to spying, like using embroidery to spy. They tell the story in this book about how Mary, Queen of Scots, tried to, if you remember this story from English history, I think her relationship to Queen Elizabeth II was they were cousins, right? Related through Henry the Third, who was Henry the Seventh, who was Henry VIII's dad, right? And that was when the War of the Roses, right? The split between Catholic and Protestant, big problem, civil war in England. But Mary, Queen of Scots, was Catholic, and she had a sort of more remote claim to the throne. And of course, Elizabeth II, the Virgin Queen, Henry VIII's daughter, took the throne. Was the natural heir. But it's the story of how Mary, knowing when she, with her second husband, there was shenanigans, and he seems to have been ordered to die through a violent murder that was botched and traced back to her. So not so good. And then she was locked up. And while she was imprisoned, she tried to get favor back with her cousin, the current queen, right, Queen Elizabeth, by using her needle and embroidering the most exquisite clothing for her, because Elizabeth was a real pig for fashion, and she liked anything fancy made of gold threads and silver threads, pure, right? So Mary, who's like, also has a pretty reasonable right to the throne, except she's the wrong religion, is sitting there in a tower waiting to be executed, using her needle to sew the most exquisite clothing in hopes that it gets her out of the terrible situation she's in. So this book is all about these stories, starting back. I have a feeling it's going to bring us right up to the 20th century, but starting back in history and talking about how needlepoint has run parallel to history and gotten a lot of people in a lot of trouble, telling stories from their point of view, which isn't always wanted, particularly because it's usually the woman who's stitching. And there was a beautiful, really sad story in there that you probably heard before about this woman in the late 19th century. Let me put this book here, find the right image. She was committed to an insane asylum, and I'm looking for the image, this one right here. She was not a well person by any means, and she kept getting kind of moved and shifted between asylums. And everywhere she went, she embroidered her clothing like this. Like she stitched words that were not very coherent. She had what I guess is now diagnosed as like a persecution, what is it called, mania, where you think everybody is out to get you, everybody's after you, wants to steal things from you, wants to kill you. She had that in the late 19th century. And so all of this clothing that she sewed, I mean, she did it all day, just embroidering her clothing, telling her story, because nobody wanted to hear these stories, but it was very cathartic for her. So this book was so good for so many interesting things that had to do with stitching. So let's come back to where we were in the book, and I'm never going to get through this today because I ran my mouth for so long. Let's get back to where we started, where we left off last time, and I think we were, remember that beautiful image of the, I didn't shut that one, but that's all right. We'll see that in the, nope, that's not going to work. Hold on, let me shut down Asylum Jacket, and I'm going to check that comment. I see somebody left me a comment. Here we are, Allotment Garden. It is a cool jacket. And we see things like that nowadays, don't we? It's a very sad story, but it is the story of somebody desperate to express themselves and desperate to be heard. And who knows, it could be one of these crazy Jane Eyre situations where she wasn't nutty at all, and she was locked up for some financial or love reason, right? Who knows? But they say it's very hard to read the jacket. Much of it is legible. Much of it is written in a language that's not a language, so her own language. So interesting story, a lot more to read on that, but that's part of the story that's told in this book. Now this piece is the last piece that we looked at. I absolutely love this piece. This is called Walk to the Allotment in 2019 by the author of this book, Mandy Pattullo. And with this example, she's saying to us, tell a story. Use your imagination and stitch imagery to convey a personal story. This could be about your family, your home, a journey, an incident. In my piece, Walk to the Allotment, it's not an accurate map, but it's about my almost daily walk over the railway line, through the cemetery, and past the community orchard to the site of my allotment. I drew round the piece of the quilt before I started and used a piece of paper exactly the same size to plan out what I wanted to include. I mapped out the main areas with brightly colored tacking line before I started, so I knew what I could fit in terms of the main elements. this piece of work developed over time, and the thinking time was just as important as the making time. I kept thinking of things that I wanted to include, and I kept making notes all the time, but also had to keep re-evaluating about what to take out. So, she's saying as this evolved, walking every day, she's thinking, oh, I'd also like to have the B, right? There's a B right between what looks like possibly the church or the rectory and the allotment garden. She kept thinking of things that she'd like to add. There's a specific gravestone down below too. That must be an important one. But then at a certain point, so much thinking and walking back and forth and evolving of this idea that at a certain point you also have to say, it's not all going to fit, is it? It's going to really take away from the composition if I get crazy with details. So she had to synthesize everything at one point. But she says she drew this very, very simply, and she just did a series of simple sketches. And because of that, you can see everybody can just do, right, satin stitches. You just stitch over what you drew, right? Whether it's a running stitch or longer stitches, simple stitches, nothing tricky going on here. No YouTube videos needed, right? But she says at the end of this allotment garden passage where she's talking about how she sets it up, because it's a lot longer than what I read, she said that she was very influenced by a Welsh stitcher from Wales, right, called Primmy Chorley, Chorley. And I have never heard of this person. And here is a terrible rabbit hole that I went down because I do not have the time for this right now, and I could not stop myself. It was an absolute stop me before I kill again. Let me share my screen and show you what I found on Primmy Chorley. Hold on one second. I've got a real problem with my cursor these days. Like, that little hand does not want to click. So let me show you what I found. I put a link in this video and also on our Facebook page. Come on, you stinker. I put a link to, wow, it's really putting up a fight today, huh? Really? This is making me, there we go. Oh, uh-oh. Okay, uh-oh, it's getting to be overturn the computer time. I put up a link in our Facebook group and also in the description of this video to an exhibit that happened, I think it was 2017 in Wales, of Primmy's work. So if you have time to look at that, that is in our Facebook page, which is Rug Cooking and Punch Needle Club. It's a beautiful video of this gallery exhibit. So I also shared the post that somebody had made in the UK of photos they had taken of this exhibit. So these are some of the images that I just wanted to share with you because I was researching Primmy Chorley like crazy after I saw that reference. And I found this beautiful piece. She's a contemporary artist. Her daughter is also an artist, has an active Facebook page, is a fiber artist in her own right. And she seems to be younger than me, so this is like contemporary set, right? Because this looks like it has potential to be like 19th century work, and it's not. So apparently Primmy also loves to do storytelling about her life, stories from her life in her work. But you can see the flatness of it, the very naive sort of quality of it. I just took a bunch of photos that I found. Also, this kind of thing that more resembles a craft that was much more popular in England than it ever was here, called stump work. One word, stump work. It's basically, it looks like felting, like three-dimensional felting. It looks a little bit like felting, a little bit like trapunto, but it's not applique. This is applique. So the three-dimensional characters that you're seeing here have been created and applied to the backing. So this is different than stump work, but it certainly bears a strong resemblance. You see all the angels on top, huge amount of storytelling here. These are images from the exhibit that I thought were just extraordinary. These are in the post that I reposted. The one thing I was happy about when I found this was that it wasn't currently going on, because then I would be really getting the travel fever to see something like this. But this is a close-up of some of Primmy's work. She uses a lot of text in her work too. Right, and another one, this is through a glass case, but what a cool use of the characters, right, what looks like the stump work, but also look at all the bow ties, right? If you have collections like this and you're wondering how to use them, how cool is this? For somebody that has a degree in costume design and construction, this really appeals to me. There is a costume element to the characters, but also the use of all those bow ties, multiples, right? And this is a close-up again, I think of the same one with the angels, but you can see there is some depth. There is something stiff in the skirts, almost like a farthingale, right, or cardboard put into these little skirts to give them this bell shape. Really, really inspiring. And this is a rabbit hole that's there for you too, because all the links are there. Some are more or less high, and in terms of like the height of the applique. Some are very three-dimensional, some are sort of in between, like this one. Laundry line in the background. There's lots going on with teacups and stuff. I just thought this was so cool. So moving on a little bit, I'll go for another couple minutes. The whole middle part of this book is particularly about applique, but wool applique. So it's got a lot of crossover to what we do. And she shows images like this, where she's actually using the corner of a wool blanket that has been washed, right? It looks like boiled wool at this point. Very, very dense and thick. So it's been felted with a washing machine. And she's still got the blanket label for it, and she has applied her own, a piece of applique, like a partly done bird, but then she has cross-stitched over the elements with her own cross-stitching design. So she has tied together the scrap of something older that maybe was unfinished or damaged, and she's applied it to a wool blanket, and she's added quite a bit of cross-stitch on top of it. So I thought, oh, interesting, right? That is really different. I wanted to show you, I had another one that I don't want to go too far. Hang on, let me come down a little bit. Flower basket, there it is. Oh boy, I'm having some real technical stuff. So this is very wool driven. This is almost like a crazy quilt background, right? Just plain, straight up wools, patterned in solids in the background. And she has done her own design over the top. So we're looking at something with a bit of a Jacobean or crewel, C-R-E-W-E-L, like feel to it. Also something that is very evocative of a like rug hooking design, a traditional basket of flowers. But she has done it on wool, and possibly with wool, thread, floss, yarn, but done stitch work, right? Done the entire motif and stitching on a crazy quilt wool background. And I thought this is just another really cool example of ways that you can go with your old stuff that is damaged or found or unfinished, right? Let me show you another thing. I'll do one more thing before we close this episode. Oh no, I have to shut this one first, right? Man, I wish you could see what my hand was doing right now. I feel like a surgeon. It's the little pointer finger is just going like berserk. All right, so that didn't close, which means, you know what? I relent. I relent. I'm going to save the rest for later because I'm really afraid that the finger is going to do something else with the finger and maybe just shut the whole thing down before I get a chance to say goodbye. So we have more to look at in this book. I'm wondering if maybe on Friday, maybe I'll do an episode on Friday where we finish looking at this, because I had a bunch more images for you to see that I thought were really cool wool crossover images using old quilts, using articles of clothing that have been deconstructed and repurposed. She does a lot in this book with using pockets. Mom, what was the thing about the pockets that your friend was just obsessed with pockets for a while? Did you find a book on pockets or something like that? My mom had this friend who got really crazy about pockets as an idea, old ones, new ones. And in this book, there's quite a few examples of cutting a garment with a pocket, like a blazer, and just cutting it large and leaving the pocket, and then stitching or appliquing like rosettes or quilted yo-yos, right, coming out of the pocket. So the pocket becomes the vase or the vessel for a bouquet, right? That's the vehicle for a bouquet to come out. And I thought, what a cool pockety thing, right? What a good idea. I thought that was really cool. It reminded me of my mom's friend's pockets. Heather, you just got home, got a boatload of goodies to sell. So good thing you popped up, because one of the chapters of this book, Heather, is specifically about using lace in your applique projects. And on Monday, when we have Madcap Monday again in the group, Heather has a ton of lace stuff that she's going to be putting up for sale. You have tons of everything, Heather, so she wants to part with some of it because it's a lot. I happen to know that. It's a lot. So those are going to be popping up on Monday. Early plug for that. But yeah, there's a lot of cool things to talk about and to look at in this book, and it crosses over really well with the mini punch stuff, because you can mini punch right into some of these things that we're talking about. Wool, you can mini punch right into a lot of stuff. Same with traditional punch. But why don't we on Friday plan to do our cocktail night? We'll plan to do more with embroidery. I'll cross over more to wool for those of you that are not into sewing and don't like holding a sewing needle. I want to cross over to your sweet spots too, right? But a lot of this stuff I think naturally will with the wool chapter coming up. So we'll do that. We'll do more of like a wool applique blowout on Friday to close this week in this subject. I think on Friday I'll also announce the book for next week, which will be the next of the sponsored by Rug Cooking Magazine book giveaways. And also I will put up later today the next bingo night. So Kira just put that together for us. The next bingo night, we are overdue for one of those, is going to be spring, the theme spring. Are you ready? Definitely ready. Spring for a theme. So I will put up those bingo cards and we can get ready, not this Friday, next Friday to do bingo. So things to remember, bingo cards are going up for sale. The Cottontail kit and class is up there. I will list these nylons, Catalina, in Baker's Dozens, and I'll put those up too. And a bunch of other classes that are up there right now. I'm in person in a lot of places right now. Just check ribboncandyhooking.com. A lot of things coming up. I'm putting together a piece that I will be teaching, a Prodi piece in November for the Green Mountain Guild. So that'll be fun. The Green Mountain School, sorry, coming up. Bunch of things coming up to talk about, but all of those should be on the Ribbon Candy Hooking site. My eye just started twitching because it's so much that I need to remember right now. So yeah, bingo coming up, a bunch of stuff coming up. If I'm forgetting something, help me trigger, remember. Miniature punch, if you have it, please send it to me, whether it's in a PM on Facebook or ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com. I really need some examples of miniature punch. If you have examples, yours are good enough. They're more than good enough. They're great. I know they are because this comes out great every time. There's really no margin for error. Crafter's Grimoire says, well, I am presently casting off a pair of old knitted wool socks. There you go. Don't do it yet. Don't do it yet. Wait and see, right? Wait and see what we've got coming up. So that'll be fun Friday. And then Monday, we're going to do Galentine's night in the evening. And Dave is going to be with us. You already committed. So I won't be running a show Monday during the day. I'll be running an evening show that's a bit longer, and I might even dress up for it. Should be a fun night for us, unless you have plans. And if you do, you can always watch later. My mom says she would paint acrylic paintings. This is pocket talk. She would paint acrylic paintings and affix a fabric pocket to the corner and put things relative to the subject of the painting in the pocket, like a bouquet sticking out. That is so cute. That just the idea of pockets is so cute. It's a bit magical, isn't it? What do people have in their pockets? It makes you wonder, doesn't it? It really could be really anything. Crafter's Grimoire said the punch needlework could resemble native beadwork on moccasins. Absolutely. And you know, it is possible to incorporate beading and stuff with the mini punch too. I've seen a lot of stuff with beads, with traditional punch and mini punch. So yes, please, thumbs up. Good idea. Another long video. I've been doing this every day lately. Not so good. Not so good for algorithms on the internet. But it was great seeing you. It was fun to catch up. And I will see you tomorrow night for cocktail night. I'll work up a great show between now and then. Please send me your miniature Russian punch. Have a great day, everybody. Great day tomorrow. And I will see you for cocktail